is going to be about how to sell your insulated copper for the best price. Now, these are the steps that you need to take before calling or going to a scrapyard to get the best price out of your insulated copper. Step one is to determine what type of copper is inside of the insulated copper. And to show you, this is insulated copper. It's got plastic, rubber, whatever you want to call it on the outside of it. So if you're going to turn it in like that, which the majority of wires I suggest you do, first you have to determine what's inside of it. Is there number 1 copper inside, or is there number 2 copper inside? Because we are buying and selling off of copper recovery in the wire, but we're either going to buy it off of a number 1 recovery or a number 2 recovery, because number 1 copper is worth more than number 2 copper. And maybe I'll put another link right here to my copper video so you can kind of tell the difference between the coppers. So, anyways, let's start with the size of each individual wire. So according to ISRI specs, and they're just guidelines for scrapyards, each individual wire has to be 16 gauge or bigger. What is 16 gauge, you ask? I'm not a units and metrics guy, Hunter. So, 16 gauge, there's 16, if you look at a ruler, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There's 16 little lines in between each inch, right? 16 gauge is just about 1/16 of an inch. So you see where I put this wire here, that's about, I'll roll it over so you can see, that's going to be about 16 gauge wire. So if it's 16 gauge or bigger, it's number 1, and you can base it off of a number 1 copper price. Now this wire is number 2 for 2 different reasons. First reason, see if I can get this to focus on it. The first reason is each individual wire is smaller than 16 gauge. Obviously. Second reason is because it's coated. It's tin coated. It's silver. You can see if you scratched into this, you'd be able to see the copper color. So you need to determine whether you have number 1 or number 2 copper in there first. All right. Your next step is to find out how much copper, bare copper, is inside of this wire. Once you find that out, you really want to know the recovery so you know what you're working with, you know what you have, and so when you take it to the scrapyard, you can tell them, well, it runs this much percentage, whatever. Most likely they're going to know if it's a common wire. But remember, like I always say, don't pay attention to what they call it. If they say it's 60% and you know it runs 75%, but their price is higher than everyone else in town, then sell it to them. Just make sure that their scale's accurate. All right, here's some other tips that can help you to get a better price. So, first tip is save up as much as possible, because the more you have, the more willing they are to pay you more. And the reason being is because they can turn it a lot faster. And some scrapyards are really worried about their cash flow and stuff like that. So the faster they can turn it, the better for them. Because the copper market is so volatile. So if they don't have anything sold, no contracts, they didn't broker anything, and drops 20 cents overnight, then they're in a lot of trouble. So, if I was a customer and I brought this much, I can't really negotiate a price as much as someone who brought this much. So, if I'm a customer and I bring this much, I can say, hey, you know, what do you think can you give me a better price since I have so much? You'll be able to get it out a lot faster. And that's usually what I'd say. Don't go in there being like, well, I got this much and I'll go to another scrapyard if you don't give me this price that I want. Because, remember, we always love to give more prices, and it's just way easier to make that decision to give more prices to people who are really easy to deal with. When they're really easy to deal with, I mean, sometimes some of the people that are easiest to deal with, even if they have 10 pounds, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm just going to pay you the dealer price, whatever. So, be as nice as you can, unless they're jerks. Then you can be a jerk back. Another reason to save up as much, well, it's really important to save up as much as you possibly can if you have some wire that, like, look around the scrapyard. If you're like, okay, I see all these piles of insulated wire, none of them look like mine. And so once you do a little more digging and ask them about it, if they're like, well, it's a really odd wire, that's really important to save up as much as you can, because if they know that they're like, well, we can't even make a bale out of this, so it's going to sit here forever until we get some wire that's like it, and then we'll have to, and they don't want stuff like that sitting around because it's money that came out of their cash flow, and the market's going to go up and down. They might benefit from it sitting there, they might not. They might not even care. There's a lot of yards like sometimes I'm just like, yeah, we'll buy it, whatever, because it's not that much money out of my pocket, and I'll just let it sit there until we get more. Well, the copper market goes up. All right, another tip for selling your insulated wire is to call every single scrapyard in your area. Call all of them, even the small ones, because a big misconception is the bigger the yard, the bigger price I'm going to get, and that's not always true, because sometimes the bigger the yard, the higher operational costs they have, and they have their limits on how much they can push the price. Or a small scrapyard might be like, man, I could just buy this stuff, turn it over, and I'll drive it myself to wherever. So they actually might give you a better price. The other reason is some of the smaller scrapyards, they might not even know what it is, and you're not tricking them. I'm not telling anyone out there to go and try to be misleading or anything like that, but we are supposed to be the metal experts. So if we buy something wrong, it falls on us, not you as a customer. You're not the metal expert, you're a customer. So if you go in with something and they're like, oh yeah, it's this, well then, that's their problem, and they're gonna have to deal with it, not yours. All right, another reason that you want to call all the scrap yards and to get a price and to call wherever you decide to go is mainly because a lot of scrap yards, if you go to the yard and say, hey, I have this truck bed full of wire, they're not going to push as hard because in their head, they're kind of like, well, they're already here, so they probably already called and saw what our scale price was, so I don't really need to push it that much. So it's always best to call. But just remember, if you don't describe your insulated wire well enough over the phone and make sure, sometimes it's nice to talk to a manager. And if they don't let you talk to a manager when you call, then I wouldn't even go there. Because anytime I tell everyone, hey, if anyone asks to talk to a manager, you go get a manager. And because if you feel like you're not getting the right price, or the person on the phone doesn't know exactly what you have, then you want to make sure you do that, because you don't want to drive all the way over there and then be like, well, you told me it was this, and you told me this price, and this is what I told you it was, and there was a misunderstanding there. So always make sure that you do that, because once you get there, they're just assuming that you're going to sell it anyway, so they're not going to push as high. Well, that's all the tips I have. There's probably more, but I think my guys are going to have a meeting in here soon, so I think they're going to kick me out. Thanks for watching. I have a confession to make. I don't even really work here. I just come and make scrapyard videos in their warehouse. How many times I have to tell you to say it's a scrapyard for?